My husband, Nick, was married to his first wife, Vanessa, for 5 years, and they had 2 amazing kids, Luke and Lila. Sadly, Vanessa died in an accident 11 years ago when the kids were very young. I started dating Nick 8 years ago, and we started off very slowly for obvious reasons. Nick has always been a little more distant than anyone I'd ever been with. But he and the kids lost Vanessa so young that I understood it. After 3 years of dating, Nick asked me to marry him and I moved in. I've always had a really great relationship with Luke and Lila, and they were happy for me to marry their dad. I had wanted an actual wedding, nothing big. But Nick really didn't want one, so we got married at the courthouse with just Luke and Lila present. We had a really fast engagement, but it worked for all of us. I have loved being Luke and Lila's stepmom and officially adopted them after I found out I was pregnant with our son, Casey. The kids have been so great with Casey and help out so much. Nick was wonderful during the pregnancy and had always been a really loving dad and husband. But Nick has been pulling away a lot the last few months. He's been even more distant than usual and working late nights and going away with friends almost every weekend. I've tried talking to him, but he's been impatient with both me and the kids. I found out I was pregnant in June and am now 21 weeks pregnant with a girl. The kids are excited to have a little sister, but Nick just seems so indifferent to everything and everyone. He's been missing soccer games, Lila's birthday, doctor's appointments, etc. Casey is too young to notice, but Luke and Lila are so hurt by their dad's absence. These kids are so good and they lost their mom so young, and I'm infuriated that Nick is ignoring the kids like this. Last week, I finally sat Nick down and told him that he needs to stop disappearing and be more present in our lives. We're going to have another child soon, and before we know it, Luke and Lila will be grown up and going to college. After an hour of arguing, he screamed at me that he wished Vanessa was still alive and that I had switched places with her and died instead. He also threw in some awful comments that I need to stop pretending I'm Luke and Lila's real mom and that I'm only half the mom Vanessa was. The final straw was him saying that he never even wanted any kids with me, but did it so I'd keep busy and leave him alone. I'm so beyond hurt right now. I know I'm just his second choice. But I've always tried to honor Vanessa and tell Luke and Lila how lucky they were to have her as their mom. I love all of our kids more than anything, and I'm just so heartbroken. Nick barely pays attention to Casey now and doesn't even acknowledge the pregnancy. He somewhat apologized this weekend and took all 3 kids to lunch, but he won't even look me in the eye. He seems like he wants to talk, but he doesn't say anything, and I'm too upset to even be near him. I'm not sure where to go from here. Honestly, I can't even be around Nick right now, and if there weren't any kids involved, I'd leave and never look back. I'm not sure if he's cheating or the thought of a 4th child is stressing him out. But I'm devastated and not sure how or why I should save this marriage, besides doing it for the kids. I got my son a 7K motorcycle for his 18th birthday this past June. My son is obsessed with automobile and loves motorcycles. In his room he has plenty of models and posters of motorcycles of all types. His bio dad passed away when he was just 12, now I'm married to my current husband and he has kids of his own. My husband has always been against my son's interest in motorcycles. He thinks I'm encouraging him to be reckless, distracting him from school and by extension his future, and spoiling him and blowing away money by spending 7K on a motorcycle. This caused some tension between him and my son, so I told him to stop complaining about it. Around 2 weeks ago, my son's motorcycle went missing. We opened a police report, but nothing came out of it. It just disappeared. My husband had a smirk on his face the entire time, just walking around saying, "I told you so. You just wasted your money." This was unbearable to hear, to be quite honest. My mother-in-law visited few days ago. She was talking about the other house my husband owns and mentioned seeing a motorcycle. One that's similar to the one that we lost in my husband's carriage while she was cleaning it. She goes to clean that house weekly even though it's empty. My husband plans on giving it to his kids as inheritance. I was puzzled. I asked if she was certain, but she showed me a photo she took of it which confirmed that it was indeed my son's motorcycle. I immediately rushed to call my husband and confront him about it. He admitted that he took and hid the motorcycle in his garage as a last resort after me and his stepson kept brushing him, and his thoughts off about the 7K being spent on something unnecessary and that could cause issues. I blew up at him demanding he return it. He refused and told me he had been considering selling it and giving the money back to me so I could use it wisely this time. I told him I was serious and that I'd call the police. He literally said, "This is a family matter and cops can't do shit about it." I had enough. I called the cops soon as I ended the call with him. The motorcycle was found and returned. But my husband had to be taken in since there was an open file about the motorcycles going missing. He was let go eventually, but he was livid with me. He came home yelling about how awful what I did was and how crazy my behavior was. I refused to engage in the argument, but he told his entire family about it and they judged me for calling the police on my own husband, even though I already asked him to return it. He said he was just looking out for my son and that one day we'll realize that he was right, but only when it's too late. My son isn't speaking to me or my husband. I feel horrible about the whole situation and am starting to think I handled this the wrong way. My boyfriend of almost 3 years told me a series of white lies that to me seem more serious. Can't tell if I'm overreacting or if this is actually indicative of a bigger problem. My boyfriend and I have been dating for almost 3 years, living together for 2. We have a pretty good relationship, obviously with ups and downs, but we make it work and are happy. A little background on me and my boyfriend. I come from a single-parent home. My father was absent. My mother was and is by no means perfect, but she did her best with what she had. We were poor. Life was never easy for us, but we had each other. Since I was pretty young, I've wanted to pay her back someday. I've worked incredibly hard to be able to do so. I help her financially as much as I can and regularly pay her bills back / send her cash. I'm also her only living child now as my brother passed away 5 years ago, which basically left me to help her. I don't care. I love my mother, and the right thing to do is to help her when she needs it. But is stressful. This is relevant because my boyfriend described coming from a somewhat similar past, and it is something we have bonded over. Having the mutual experiences seemed to bring us closer. He told me he also helped his parents financially, and we would often vent to each other about the stress it brings. I am not one to confide in many people, so having someone who I felt like actually understood me was meaningful to me. So here is where the lies come in, and I need someone to either tell me I'm not crazy and this is horror, or that I am crazy and this isn't a huge deal. I'm fine with either. When we met, my boyfriend lived in a condo in a pretty swanky part of the city. I live in the US Northeast. He told me he owned that apartment / condo. I found this to be interesting / odd because he was 28 at the time, and I know this property is upwards of $650,000 on the low end, and he was in an entry-level job for only like 2 years, so the numbers just didn't really add up. Whatever, maybe he's good at saving. But then, since living together, I never once saw a piece of mail for a mortgage payment, electric bill, taxes, nothing. Not for 2 whole years. Very odd. Also, when we started living together, he didn't have his room rented out in the former apartment yet, so he was still responsible for that portion of the rent. He would send a Venmo payment to his mother on the 1st of every month for his portion. I don't own property, but I can't think of a scenario where I would Venmo my mother to pay the mortgage on a property I supposedly own. Getting more odd. He would then go to his parents' house for an afternoon and come back really upset. Usually when I would ask why, it was because they were having financial problems and he needed to help them out. I totally understood this and supported him. He literally has cried on my shoulder about this many times. He tried to start a company years back and ended up getting into debt somehow. He told me this debt was $17,000 and that he paid it off. I'm confused because I met him only 2 to 3 years after the supposed debt accrued / company dissolved, and it was already paid off. He told me when he moved back home after the business failed, he was $17,000 in debt and living at his parents' house working at a minimum wage job. How someone with a minimum wage job pays off that much debt in 3 years, I'll never know. We got into a fight a few weeks ago and I finally had enough and confronted him about these things. He doesn't help his parents, they actually pay his phone bill, and this was all a lie. He doesn't own that apartment, he didn't pay off that debt from his company. He initially told me his parents helped pay it off and then like 3 minutes later, came clean. And said that his business partner paid it off, so I have literally no idea what the truth is there, and if anything, in my eyes. His parents are the ones who are financially supporting him. So now, I'm dating a 31-year-old man who doesn't pay his own phone bill, was lying to me and / or completely fabricating aspects of his life for 3 years. And then when confronted about it, continued to make up lies and then came clean about them 5 minutes later. I'm obviously concerned that he could lie for this long, about fundamentally important things like our values, and so on. I sincerely thought I would marry this man. He seemed to understand me like no one else and to be a truly caring and genuine person. Now I'm having a hard time rationalizing actually planning a life around someone who would not only lie about their background and family etc. but also financial aspects. Aside from that, I now can't tell what is the truth and what is a lie. I've also noticed other things he has lied about, called him out on it, and he has denied it outright to my face. I see this as a form of gaslighting, as I know I'm not wrong, but he is trying to convince me otherwise. Am I overreacting? Is this a white lie that went haywire? Or is this actually a series of complete and utter bullshit used to manipulate me? And also, is it insane for me to actually consider a life with this man? I'm 23. I've known I was adopted all along. For whatever reason, I became obsessed with learning more about my birth parents at age 13. I was told all my life that my parents met both of my birth parents before I was officially adopted. My mom was white from South America and my dad was white from Italy. They specified these two locations to explain why I had tan skin. As I was growing up, certain things about my physical makeup made me more curious about my birth parents. My hair was kept short as a kid, but as a teen I wanted to experiment. I grew it out and it grew out curly. Big curls, but still curly. This upset my parents, so they asked that I not grow it out. When I moved away for college, I began to let it grow again. I met my girlfriend in school. She is Black American, so she also helped me care for it. She once braided my hair before I FaceTimed my parents, who lost it on me for wearing it that way. Throughout my time in school, I still searched for my birth mom, but would always come up empty. My girlfriend hinted that there must have been a mistake with the information, even down to the name my parents claimed I had before they adopted me. She gifted me a DNA kit on my birthday that I didn't get around to until the lockdown hit. I didn't think anything would come of it because my parents weren't American, so I didn't know if it would work that way. So I sent it out of boredom and got my results weeks later, which have changed everything. I'm Black and Middle Eastern. I have light skin and my curl pattern is so loose that I hadn't considered it a sign before. I have ancestral ties to Iran, which can explain a more European facial structure. I'm sorry for my wording, I'm still learning. I sent my GF a screenshot and she called me right away. We were both stunned, though she long suspected. I tried to believe that my parents were innocently misinformed, but my girlfriend kept pointing out the inconsistencies. My parents claimed to have met my birth parents, therefore they couldn't have mistaken them for white. I confronted my parents, who became enraged at me for doing a DNA kit. I was very angry, yelling, swearing. They robbed me of my identity and hindered my search with their lies. My mom told me through tears that my racial background comes with a stigma that I passed, so she wanted me to have an easier life fitting in. My dad yelled at me that I had to abandon what I just learned. I rage broke my phone and left. My siblings have been hitting me up on social media, reprimanding me for being upset because our parents' reasoning is sound. I do pass. I did have an easy life. I'm not asking to be part of a struggle all of a sudden. I just don't think I should have been lied to, and I think their reasoning is bullshit and racist. I'm just supposed to act like 10 years of me searching with the wrong info isn't that big of a deal? My parents admit that my mom was Black. My oldest sister also recalls seeing my mom at some point. Both verify that she was Black. Yes, they could be lying again. I have plans to continue to look into my background. My girlfriend was very hurt by their statements, so I chose to keep us both away from them. I don't understand how. I'm angry about being lied to and how that lie has made my effort into finding my birth parents completely void, while also rewriting my heritage. That's my girlfriend's stance as well. I'm tan enough that going to an all-white school still got me called slurs. Whatever issues my parents were trying to shield me from, it didn't work. Maybe this is a lie that I bought into alone. 2 of my siblings are trying to be supportive. I deactivated my Facebook and unfollowed some people on Instagram. I can't entertain the argument that I should forgive my parents and move on. I'm not there yet. I get that it makes me ungrateful for feeling this way. I don't hate them, I'm just really upset and disappointed in their decisions.